on the stage, I'm just going to step down for a minute and thank some of the folks who are on the stage. I know I'm going to miss people. This room is full of friends and colleagues and people who have done so much and are doing so much to make everything a better place. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. First of all, I want to thank Senator Anthony Williams. And if I mess up, please forgive me. But I think the stage and I think the crowd here tells you a lot about what this movement for criminal justice reform is about, which is evolving into a movement to save democracy. Not our doing, but it is our duty. So let me just start out. I'll work from right to left with the father-to-be, Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke. T.J. Ghosh, professor, activist, sometime defendant, is right here, but only for good reasons. We have with us Salah Muhammad, who is from Working Families Party. Asa Khalif, speaking of some of my favorite defendants, we have Asa Khalif. We have with us Mabel, I call her Mayor Mabel, who is the unofficial mayor of Chinatown, and she is here with us. Senator Nikhil Saval. My friend and colleague, Sheriff Rochelle Bilal. Sharon Vaughn, of whom I am a big fan. We have Council President Kenyatta Johnson here, thank you. We have with us the dynamic trio, Council members Kendra Brooks, Jamie Gauthier, and Rue Landau, also a former client. Only for good reasons, though. We have Andre Carroll. Thank you for being here. We have President Boulware, who is here with us, and we have yes, of course. We have State Representative Rick Krajewski. But that is not all we have. We have an audience full of some of the movers and shakers, some of the community members, some of the activists, some of the people who get it done all the time. We have some ward leaders. We have Imam Nurdeen here, who has been such a good friend of the office. Salim Holbrook is here, who does incredible work in Harrisburg on reform. Reuben Jones is here. We have Reverend Cavanaugh, who has replaced Reverend Tyler at Mother Bethel. Pete Wilson, I could go on, but then again, we would never actually get to the speech. So let me get to the speech, if you all wouldn't mind. All right. You know that's we're good. Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here. I am here to announce that I'm running for re-election as District Attorney of Philadelphia. DA is a phrase that used to have one meaning. It meant District Attorney, and now has two. The first one is District Attorney, where we work every day to try to be fair and sort out some of the most difficult issues, difficult problems you can have in criminal justice. But DA has come to have a new meaning that I never expected in the last 7 years, and that is democracy advocate. We will get to that. If any of you are feeling like what's happening in Washington has you down, has you frightened, has you immobilized, you don't know what to do, well, I suggest this. I suggest we turn to each other, not on each other. And if we turn to each other, then there's a couple of wannabe oligarchs and there's a wannabe dictator who are going to figure out there's more of us than them. And they have a problem. Here's the reality. We are going to win. This is like a disease. The fever is going to break. And when that fever breaks, as it has, we are going to be there to make sure that this country continues on its course, that it corrects that course when it gets off, and that we get to the right place. But let me start with my first job, which is district attorney. So 8 years ago, I stood in the same place, one of the a media outlet that is not for sale, thank goodness. And I say that with love and respect. But you can't buy the public, and this is public access cable. I'm delighted to be here. I even remember the people who were responsible for starting it, and that was quite a battle, but it was the good fight, and they won that fight. 8 years ago, I stood up here, and I was talking about our vision, our ideas. We didn't have achievements at that point. We were just thinking about it. It was an outsider campaign. It was a long shot campaign, according to all the experts. I won't get into the details there, but according to all the experts, it was an outsider campaign. And what we said at that time is justice makes us safer. Well, it has. Doing justice has made us safer, but there's another side to it as well. It has also made us freer. It has made us safer and freer all at the same time, all at once. And that is what we should want from a prosecutor's office. That's what we should want from our government, that it makes us safer and it makes us freer all at the same time. The district attorney's obligation is to seek justice. That is the oath. That is what we're supposed to do. That's a little vague. It's not real obvious. But it is most assuredly not to win at all cost and not to cheat to get there. It is most assuredly not to put innocent people in jail in the place of the guilty ones who committed that crime. So it takes some effort. We have all been told for the longest time that if you just locked everybody up, we'd all be safe. Well, it turns out that don't work. That has never worked. When you lock everybody up, you take away so many things that actually will make us safer. But how safe are we? Let's start right there. How safe are we? Well, I can tell you I checked this morning. I checked 2 or 3 times a day on the Philadelphia Police Department's publicly available database. And as of this morning, we have the lowest number of homicides in at least the last 15 years. And that's because I can only see 15 years. That's where we are. Last year was a truly exceptional year in Philadelphia for improving public safety. We had the largest percent reduction in homicides in Philadelphia history. We led the nation. We led the nation among big cities in terms of the improvements in public safety last year, and not for the first time. We have been on this track now. We're in our 5th year of being on this track of homicides going down and down and down. As of today, 27 homicides in Philadelphia. As of this day last year, that exceptional year, 41. That is where we are at this point. And obviously there's nothing to celebrate for a family that has lost a loved one. That is heartbreaking. These are numbers that you can't even hear. But we have to not only remember the shootings that occur, the killings that occur, we also have to bear in mind that we will never know the names of the people who have not become victims, who have not been killed, whose families are okay. And it's a lot. Not so long ago, we were looking at 71 homicides. On this day of the year, we are at 27. And that is a good start in the direction of safety. Now, if you're wondering, well, how does it compare to when you came into the office? The answer is very favorably. The total number of homicides that we had last year, which was in the last 40 years, the 3rd lowest, in the last 55 years, the 4th lowest, the total number of homicides we had last year was 269. The year before we came into office, it was 315. We are way below where we were before we came into office. Don't believe the hype, believe the truth, believe the facts, because we are way below where we started at that time. And let's back up a little bit more. Is this a one-year thing? Is this just something that happened? The answer is no. We are in the 5th consecutive year of seeing homicides go down and down and down and down. And here's the most important part. This has been happening nationally because during the pandemic, over a 5-year period, we saw the biggest spike up and the biggest spike down. The biggest spike down was last year nationally, okay? But the real question is, well, how did we do compared to other major cities? How did we do compared to the rest of the country? Because the whole country is enjoying this improvement just as they enjoyed the problem. I shouldn't say enjoyed, just as they suffered the problem earlier, okay? How are we doing? Well, a few years ago, for the first time in the pandemic, homicide dropped 8%. In Philly, it was 11%. And I'm speaking now the average of major cities. When it was 8 on average elsewhere, it was an 11% drop here. The next year, it was 13% for major cities. It was 20% here. Last year, it was 22, 23% nationally. It was 35% here. And this year we are below that. Right now, we're 14 fewer homicides than on this day last year, that record year, that remarkable year when we led the country. Are we going in the right direction? Well, thanks to our partners, many of whom are in this room, yes, we are. We are going in the right direction when it comes to safety. And who are those partners? They're good parents. They're good teachers. They're good community groups. They're mentors. Mentors come in a lot of flavors. Sports coaches, clergy in houses of faith who are making sure the young people connected to that institution have constructive things to do with their time. Those are our partners. So is the Philadelphia Police Department. So is the FBI. So is the DEA. So is the ATF. We have our enforcement partners. We have our community partners. And we have done what we can with limited resources to lift up the mom and pop community partners who have done incredible work in this community for the longest time. They didn't always get the resources. They didn't always get them up front. But when we collectively, and I say that with love and respect for everybody standing around me because they're the ones who did this. They're the ones who did this when it came to the city funding prevention. You know who I'm talking about. They're the ones who did this, right? But when we...
And the state funding.
And the state...
Ours was more than theirs, by the way. I'm just not saying anything.
I just want to thank you again, Senator Williams.
No problem. Always happy to help.
I appreciate it. We all need a mentor, and I do appreciate it, sir. But anyway, it is that robust prevention, that belief that when you meet people's basic needs, when you let young people see a future, it gets safer. It is that combined with modern enforcement that relies heavily upon forensics that has made such a difference. Let me just give you a snippet there. We have this thing called the Gun Violence Task Force in which Senator Williams was actually very involved. It's been around for quite some time. What it did before we got here was basically straw purchases, illegal purchases of guns. Important. We've expanded it. It has now become a deep dive investigative tool to go after shooting groups that have torn up this city for decades. If you've heard phrases like, "O to the fore, go to the jail," you might have heard that. Well, they did. And they did because the state, as well as the city, invested in a whole lot of forensic hardware that made it so that we could not just find out about one shooting, but we could, through a very careful and accurate analysis, take down 9 people responsible for 30 shootings, 3 of them homicides, and resolve that issue and put ourselves in a position to do something you really have never heard in this city, which is be able to say that some of these long-lasting, I should say historic, but that's the wrong word, infamous shooting groups are out of business.
Amen.
And so I hope that speaks a little bit to what has been going on in terms of safety, both at the level of prevention and enforcement. But let's talk a little bit about the challenges we face. First challenge, we as elected officials, we as politicians need to do the opposite of what elected officials and politicians do, which is when things get better, they take their foot off the gas. Things are better now, but this is still a chronically violent city. It is still the poorest of the 10 largest cities, and any criminologist will tell you the link there. It's a real thing. We still have more guns on the street every single day than we had on the street the day before. We still have that. So we as elected officials, even if it isn't always the headline, need to try to take this city by keeping our foot on the gas when it comes to prevention, when it comes to modern enforcement, when it comes to supporting community-based groups that do so much. What we have to do here is we need to take this city from being chronically violent to consistently safe. And that is something that we can do if we all turn to each other instead of turning on each other, if we all do the thing that is not so political but is so much in the public interest, which is to keep our foot on the gas of what works and what the evidence proves actually works. So that is one. Second challenge that we have is, as always, we face some new issues. One of the big ones that we have is the perfect storm that we have seen surrounding people who are unhoused, surrounding mental illness, and surrounding the things that they do to survive at a time when they cannot afford housing, when the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and this is a problem all over the country. There were more homeless people in the United States last year than in any year in recorded history. We live in a country that has 5% of the population, but it consumes more than 25% of all pharmaceutical opioids. Why? Because some companies in this country make a lot of money off of producing pharmaceutical opioids. They are the most prolific and most harmful drug dealers in world history. They have not been brought to heel by government. Lawsuits against them, including by government, have been settled for too little money, and we don't even know whether the money's going to go the right way. When you take homelessness and you add addiction and you realize 85% of our mental health system disappeared during the decades-long rise of mass incarceration in the most incarcerated country in the world, all of this has become a perfect storm that leaves us with a couple of other factors, with a problem with retail theft. It leaves us with a problem with petty theft. It leaves us with a problem with quality of life crimes. And yes, these other factors have made it even a little bit worse. Those factors are the internet has become a marketplace. It has become the fence. You don't even need to go to a fence anymore to sell your stolen goods. And at the same time, a lot of our traditional stores, the ones you walk into and people say hi to you, those stores, a lot of those stores have suffered economically from the rise of the internet and from the reality that even at pharmacies, you are seeing a lot of people fill their prescriptions online. All of this has come together in a way that is new, that we can handle, and that has been the origin of our own retail theft task force now for over a year. It is a mission we're going to continue, in which we have enjoyed very good success working with our partners. And such success that I'm getting phone calls from DAs and other jurisdictions saying, how do we do this? But it is a struggle. It is a challenge. And it is something that we're not going to resolve this year. We're going to have to all work together to find ways to deal with the public health issues, the causes of the situation. We can just lock it up, but it'll keep going the minute people get back out. Or we can actually try to deal with the underlying issues and do individual justice here and make sure that we handle that perfect storm in the way that it needs to be handled. But the third point, and this, of course, is one that I'm sure is familiar to all of you. The third point is we have an unprecedented situation in Washington, D.C. We have relied on the federal government my entire career, and I'm pushing up on 37, 38 years now. We have relied on the federal government to make sure that financial crimes weren't out of control, that bribery wasn't out of control, that the environment wasn't out of control, that people weren't stealing personal information from Americans for their own profit. We have relied on the federal government not to take insurrectionists, traitors to this nation, people who are fundamentally anti-American and un-American and anti-democracy. We have relied on the federal government not to say, here is your get-out-of-jail-free card, and yet what we have seen in recent times is just that. Now, if that makes you gloomy, don't gloom, because here's the bottom line. Haters lose.
Say it again.
Haters lose. And they're going to lose. And they're going to lose big. And after they lose, we're going to look back at them and shake our heads in the same way people look back at Joe McCarthy and his phony, lying, Red Scare. And we are going to shake our heads. And the people who are on the wrong side of this line, because there is a moral line here, the people on the wrong side of this moral line will get the reputation they deserve. And it will be a profile in cowardice. It will not be a profile in courage. These are people who are fundamentally un-American and anti-American. And in case you notice, there's a small flag behind me here. Well, the people you're looking at actually believe in the fundamental principles of this country, the biggest one being equality. That's where we are. So please give me an opportunity just to tell you a little story, because I think it says something. If you're sitting at home thinking, oh my goodness, what can I do? You're on that phone, clicking away. Or maybe you're out there marching. We saw a lot of people marching just yesterday, George Washington's birthday. We saw a whole lot of people out there marching yesterday. If you're wondering what we're going to do, well, I would ask you to think back a little bit. Have we been here before? There was a civil war, wasn't it? At its core, it was about hate, wasn't it? Wasn't that the point? We got through it. There was another war. I know something about that because my dad served in it. 1941, Pearl Harbor happens. I think it was 24. Okay? So, my dad was a son of immigrants, 24 years old, working for the U.S. Postal Service, out of high school, and Pearl Harbor happens, he volunteers. Son of immigrants. His country, he volunteers. And he ends up serving in the Pacific, little island called Kwajalein. But he wasn't the only one. His little brother was an artillery spotter in Germany, in the forest in Germany. Anybody know what an artillery spotter is? That's the person who's in between both lines with shells flying over your head and is praying that neither side gets you, even though your side ain't trying, it can happen, right? That's where he was. My dad, his little brother, had all these cousins, and they had a bunch of future brothers-in-law. They also served. And not all of them came home. But the ones who did paid a price. What was that price? Jungle rot, hearing loss, shell shock. That's what they called it. We now call it PTSD. They paid a price. 400,000 plus Americans died in that war, fighting hate, protecting democracy. That's what they did. And you now have a president whose grandfather, an immigrant, was arrested marching with the Ku Klux Klan in New York because he was such an exceptional member of that march, which was a very large march, that he distinguished himself to the point of being arrested with a few others in a crowd of thousands. Okay? And that president has been endorsed 2 times by the Ku Klux Klan. That is what you have in Washington, D.C. right now. If that makes you sad, then cut it out, because haters lose. Haters lose. Haters divide. I got to tell you, I don't even like podiums because they separate us. I don't even like being up here because, I mean, we're not any better than you. There's no reason why we should be standing higher than you. These people are all about that. They are all about hate. They are all about division. They are all about getting you to turn on somebody else instead of asking you to turn to them. And yes, we can stand up to that. Yes, we will stand up to that. These white supremacists want a replay of the Civil War. So sorry, you're not getting it. That's not going to happen. Some of these, how shall I put it, fascist adjacent people on the right can't figure out which was the right side in World War II. I think I got it figured out. I don't think it's that hard. Here is the reality. There's a whole lot of us. They might have a whole lot of dollars, but there's a whole lot of us, and there's not a whole lot of them. And I am telling you, I know, I absolutely know in my heart of hearts, we're going to win. We're going to win big. We're going to do it together. We're going to stand up together. And we are going to make sure that even a lawless president, which is what he is, even a president who thinks you can scribble words on a piece of paper and rewrite the Constitution, which is what he is, we are going to make sure that his little plan to take over America fails, that his little plan to turn a democracy into a monarchy, that his little plan to be a wannabe dictator surrounded by wannabe oligarchs, we are going to make very, very, very sure that, like all those other haters in the Civil War, in the Second World War, we're going to make very sure that these haters lose.
That's right.
So there's really only one thing left for me to do, and that is to say why this election is a whole lot bigger than what happens in Philadelphia, and it's a whole lot bigger than the next 4 years, the next term. That's big, don't get me wrong, because we have done so much to be safer, so much to be freer. We have accomplished so much, even with our mistakes, and yes, we make mistakes every day, no question about it. But this is why. We got this election this year, and then we got midterms. The midterms are coming. This twice endorsed Klan president, that guy, he's got midterms coming. And Americans pretty soon are going to see all the cracks in the wall. They're going to see everything that he is up to and his, how shall I put it, apartheid-raised friends. And I mean on the powerful side, not the less powerful side. We need to win those midterms. We as Democrats need to take back the House. We need to bite into that lead in the Senate, hopefully take that one back too. And if we do that, there's not a thing this hater is going to be able to do for the last 2 years of that term. If we can slow down this maniacal behavior now, and we can shut it down in the last 2 years, then his bigger plans, and you know what they are, his bigger plans are not going to come. So this campaign becomes the opportunity, because Washington is watching. Oh, trust me. This city's name and my name have been in the mouth of these people for quite some time. They understand the value in crushing honest reform prosecutors in big blue cities. They've been at it all over the country. Even the state legislators have been at it. You might remember that part, right? But what we can do with this election, with your help as volunteers, with your help as donors, what we can do with this election is register an unheard of number of new votes. What we can do with this election is scare some of the folks in Washington, D.C. half to death when they see the turnout and the votes in this election bigger than they have ever seen. And I know we can do that because in 2017, we went way bigger than anybody expected. And then when everybody said you'll never do it again in 21, oh, yes, we did. So that is the mission. And if I can play any part in that mission, if we can play any part in that mission of registering people, getting them to vote, even if it's the first time, voting is habitual. If they vote now, they know where to go to vote at the midterms. If we can all work together to do that, then we are going to save our country. Then we are going to beat down the haters one more time, make sure these haters lose. Then we are going to stand up in the same way we stood up in the Civil War, we stood up in World War II. We are going to stand up and we're going to knock them down. And that is going to be the future of organized labor. That's going to be the future of women. That's going to be the future of LGBTQ people. That is going to be the future of making sure that every vote in Philadelphia is actually counted and is not undermined. There is no doubt in my mind that if we stand up together, if we organize a volunteer army like this has never seen, one that I can pass on so that it can be used in the midterms, if we get out votes that people have never seen, votes that we can pass on so that we can win it in the midterms, then this is going to be the city and the country that we want it to be and that we want it to stay. So in 1 second, I'm going to ask you to do something. And that is, I'm going to ask you to join me in this movement, which is your movement. And I'm going to ask you to do it by standing up. Are we ready?
Ready.
I'm asking you all now to join me.
Stand up. Yay. Stand up. Fight back. Fight back.
Thank you all for being here. You are absolutely the best. You care deeply about your community. And we're going to make sure these haters lose. Thank you.